is about you. It's all about you learning these laws so that you can communicate better and be much more effective in whatever work that you're doing. So I'm very excited about it. I think you're ready to get started. I know I am too. And the first law we're going to talk about is the law of connection. And the reason that we're talking about the law of connection is because honestly, that's the key to the entire book. Because the law of connection lets us know that speaking, communicating, is all about others. Now, you're seeing me standing here in this empty auditorium. And I know when you think of communication, you think I'm going to be on stage because that's where communicators stand or sit. But I don't really start my communication on stage. I really started here in the auditorium. Because what I need to do as an effective communicator is I need to think not as a speaker, but as a listener. Not as someone who's on stage, but someone who is sitting in these empty pews. And may I say this? If you know how to connect with people, then the pews, the seats that you have will be filled with people that are going to learn and grow. But if I can't connect, honestly, I might as well have empty seats in the auditorium because nobody is going to be listening and nobody is going to be learning. So I start here. I sit in these seats because I'm wanting to feel what the audience is going to feel when they walk in. I begin to put my mind not on the stage, but out where the seats are. I was speaking in Canton, Ohio a few years ago. This is very interesting. And I was in the green room, and there were two other speakers, and the conference had been going on for a few hours. And one of the speakers came up to me and said, "John, you're going to speak in 5 minutes. What are you thinking about?" And I looked at him and I said, "Well, I'm thinking about the audience." And he was very surprised. He said, "I thought you'd be thinking about your talk." I said, "No, I know what I'm going to say. It's not an issue of content, it's an issue of connection. How do I connect with the audience?" So I sit here in an empty auditorium before I ever speak, and I put myself in the heart and the mindset of the audience, because I know if I'm thinking about them, I'll connect with them. When I graduated from college, my dad gave me some great advice. He said, "John, if you want to be successful in life, you need to believe in people, you need to value people, and you need to unconditionally love them." And that's what I've done all my life. When I speak, I look at the auditorium, I look at the people, I look into their eyes, and I'm saying to them visually, "I value you, I believe in you, I unconditionally love you." And as they are in their seats, they receive that message. They begin to feel it, they begin to sense it, which is the first start of connecting and really helping people. Just unconditional loving. So people say, "John, what's the key to connecting?" Okay. I told you my name is John, I'm your friend. I'm going to give you the key right now. It's so simple, you're going to get it immediately, but it's so hard. It may take you, like it did me, 8 years to practice it and get it good. You see, the key to connecting is you have to get over yourself. Because this is not about me, this is about you, this is about the audience. And when I get over myself, then I can give myself to you. As long as I'm thinking about me and my speech, and am I doing a good job, and do the people like me, and are they understanding what I'm saying? As long as it's about me, I won't connect with you. It's impossible for me to think about me and connect with you at the same time. So it is all about you. So I sit in an empty auditorium, but I know that soon this auditorium will be filled with people. They're going to come in and they're going to sit down in these seats, and I will then go to the stage, because that's what communicators do. They do get to the stage, but they don't start at the stage. They start right here in the auditorium, in these seats, putting themselves where the people are. In fact, they're coming in now. Just come on in. I'm so glad to see all of you. And make yourself at home and grab a seat. And by the way, this is very important. If you can get over yourself, I can now give myself to the people that are sitting here. But if you don't connect with people, honestly, it's like winking at a girl in the dark. Huh. Nothing happens. You don't want to do that. When you speak, you want something to happen. So now as they come in and are going to listen to me, hi, good to see you. I'm glad you came. You see, there's a question. There's a question I have to ask myself. And the question is, do I want you to be fans of mine, or do you want to be friends of mine? You see, that's the question I have to ask, because if I want fans, I will speak and separate myself from the audience, because I want them to be impressed with me. I want them to say, oh my gosh, Maxwell is amazing. He's so good. Oh yes, I'm so glad I'm hearing him. But it's not about me, it's about you. So how do I turn fans into friends? It's very simple. I close the gap. And so, I'm not wanting you to be amazed at how John Maxwell communicates. I want you to be amazed by the fact that what I say, you can apply to your life. That when you walk out, you're not going to say, boy, John is amazing. What you're going to say is, I think I could be amazing. You're going to begin to focus on you, and by focusing on you, you're going to improve your life. And by the way, that's what a communicator wants for the audience. So when I speak, I start connecting with my audience immediately. Let me show you what I'm talking about. My name is John. My name's John. I'm your friend. My name's John. And I'm your friend. My name is John. I'm your friend. What's your name? Nice to meet you. On the count of three, give me your name. 1, 2, 3. Nice to meet you. Can you guys backstage do me a favor? If you've got a stool, I'd love to bring out a bar stool. I'd like to sit down and talk with people. Can you hang with me for 4 sessions? Look at your neighbor and say, don't miss this. Look at your neighbor and say, you're about to understand life. Look at your neighbor and say, transformation is possible. Look at your neighbor and tell them I'm learning something. So look at the person beside you and say to them, you can become a better communicator. If I could just literally come off the stage and I could get real close to you and we could have kind of like a one-on-one conversation. Oh, thank you. I love this. She just put her tablet in front of the timer. Let me explain something to you. She knows how to read the room. How many of you would like to improve your communicating skills? Let's see that hand, okay? Look, everybody's got their hands raised. I'm going to talk to you in a moment about connecting, and when I saw the guys with the red tennis shoes, I said, I have got to have some. My name is John, and I'm your friend. If you want to become a great communicator, you need to focus on the people in the audience. In other words, it's not about you. It's not about me as the speaker. It's about the audience. And I have to get over myself. You're going to have to get over yourself. If you get the book, you're going to learn a lot more about the law of connection because it is so essential for your success as a communicator. Now, the second law that I'm going to share with you is the law of visual expression. In other words, show and tell is better than tell, okay? I have really taken time in my communication process to learn this law. And let me tell you why. I started off standing behind a large podium. And to be honest with you, it was so big that if all they could see was from the neck up, honestly, if I didn't have any clothes, they would never even know it because I could just be, butt naked, you understand? Because all they could see was the head. And I began to learn that that's not a good way to effectively communicate with people. So I advanced slowly. I went to a smaller podium. And then one day I stood up and I started walking around and connecting and talking with the audience. You see, body movements, gestures that I do, my facial expressions, all of those things are extremely important in connecting with people. Now, the reason I've said often already in our teaching that you have to get over yourself so that you can give yourself the audience is that when it's not about me as the speaker, I'm going to have freedom to be very expressive. Now, the moment that I think it's about me, then I'm going to be saying, well, I wonder if they'll like this expression. I wonder if this will please them. But you become very free when you can get over yourself. And I have a video that I want you to see that has been seen by millions of people of me speaking when the music stand just went bad. And I wasn't prepared for it, the people weren't prepared for it, but we had a blast. You watch this. I hate bologna sandwiches. And the guy beside says, heel. I hate cheap music stands. Especially when they interrupt my story. I'm right in the middle of a great story. Look at this, Todd. Could you talk to your dad about this? I mean, we just... Look at this. Would you take that? Oh, give me the rubber band, thank you. Oh, am I getting the story now? Oh! You gotta get something you can depend on. Thank you.
Yakini. Kisha hata kashidi ba yikuti mama sa dai street yakini. Nala na wa
The message is on attitude. And I'm doing my best. I'm just doing my best. Okay, well, I hope the music stand really never happens to you, but if it does, if you've gotten over yourself, you can enjoy yourself. And here's what I know. If it's about me, when something goes wrong, the audience becomes a little bit embarrassed for me. But if I'm enjoying myself and it's not about me, then everyone else can enjoy the experience, even if it's going south. But another way for visual expression is through word pictures. I can remember being with my friend Chris Stevens, and we were celebrating an anniversary of his leadership. And there's a huge crowd, thousands of people that night. But during the day, we played golf. Chris is a good golfer. I'm a good golfer. Chris on the third hole hit a ball about this far from the hole. And in fact, I said, lay down beside the ball and have your putter there. And I took a picture of him laying there by the green with the hole there real close. And it just kind of showed that Chris made a very good shot. When I went to speak that night, I brought 2 pictures. And I gave it to the crew. I said, I want you, when I speak, to show these pictures when I ask for them. The first picture is Chris with the ball about that close to the hole. And I looked at the audience and I said, Chris Stevens, your leader is a fabulous golfer. Look at that picture. That's how good a golfer he is. He's amazing. Now, the second picture is from the 18th hole, where I had shot and I hit the ball that close to the hole. Now, I've just got done saying that Chris is an amazing golfer. You with me? This is the law of visual expression. This is how it works. Show and tell is just better than tell. So after I bragged on Chris with his putt about that close, I said, oh, and this was my shot. And they showed it with it real. I never said a word. The crowd just erupted in laughter. You see, again, the power of visual communication is just absolutely huge. I can remember one other quick story. Several years ago, when Robert Schuller was still pastor at the Crystal Cathedral, you have to go back really about 20, 25 years ago, when the large video screens started to appear in auditoriums. And I had never spoken with a large video screen. I was used to this kind of eye-to-eye connection where people would watch me. And so when I got up to speak, this really caught me by surprise because the video screen wasn't like behind me. It was about 35, 40 yards to my left. And so when I got up to speak, the people weren't looking at me. They were looking over at the screen. And it unnerved me. I thought, oh my gosh, what are they doing? They're looking, and my first impulse was get up, run over to where the screen is, and stand beneath the screen. And now you're kind of looking at me, but of course I couldn't get over there. And so now I'm sitting here, they're looking over there, and guess what happened? I made just a funny expression, and the place erupted in laughter. And immediately I realized they're seeing me. They're visually seeing me. In fact, they're visually seeing me better than they've ever seen me before, because now my face is not the size, my face is like 4x4, you know what I'm saying? And again, it's just the power of what visual expression will do in speaking. How about if I just take a moment and I show you some examples of some of my visual expressions that you'll laugh a little bit when you see these. They understand that effectiveness in leadership and effectiveness in communication is based on similarity, not differences. When you have a tough call, gang, here's the way this works. Everything worthwhile is uphill, and if everything worthwhile is uphill, we have to be intentional to go uphill. When you make the tough call, tough calls equal a breakthrough. If I'm a 4 as a leader, the people I attract to me will basically be 3s, 2s, and 1s. We have a choice as leaders, and that is that we can either let people into our life, or we can basically stiff-arm people and keep them at a distance. You don't just get out one day and say, oh, I got a real tough call, I don't know, should I relocate the organization or not relocate the organization? Well, let me see, let me get a coin. Heads we relocate, tails we stay, Look at this. I have no idea. Oh! Yes! 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 I put it on backwards. Now, let me just say something to you. Don't overthink this, okay? I'm not suggesting you need to perform a country song with a cowboy hat for the next talk that you do. Don't even go there. I look like a dwarf myself with that cowboy hat, I know. But I am talking to you about connecting with people and using visual aids to do it. Simon Sinek, who's a great friend of mine, has a video that literally has been watched by over 57 million viewers. And what did he use for his visual? An old-fashioned, flip chart, okay? I mean, it doesn't matter. What I'm saying to you is anytime you have something else beside yourself to use for visual expression, it just allows you to get the message over and connect with the people. So I would encourage you to try adding a little visual expression to your next talk. And I'll bet you'll be amazed at how your audience responds. Show and tell is better than just tell. And I want to encourage you, if you'll get the 16 Laws of Communication book, you're just going to learn so much more about the law of visual expression. All I'm doing is giving you just a little tipping point of each one of these laws, enough to encourage you to be a better communicator but also not enough to encourage you to get the book. You really want the 16 laws of communication. One of my biggest speaking failures was when I was asked to fill in for another speaker, and really all I have to do is give you his name and I'll tell you the story. I was asked several years ago at a huge convention in Boston, about 10, 12,000 people. On the day that the convention was happening, I wasn't one of the scheduled speakers at all. In the morning, late morning, I received a call from the man who was leading that convention. And he said, John, our featured last speaker is not able to speak today. He's not well physically. And would you catch a plane and run up here and would you fill in for him? And I said, sure, I'll be glad to do that. If I can, get the flight and we can make this happen. And then I said, well, who is it? He said, Christopher Reeves. Superman. Fat man is going to fill in for Superman. So I know I'm already in trouble. Okay, this is not going to be very easy at all. But so I get up there, and so now I literally get up there about 15 minutes before I was supposed to speak, and so I'm over the side, they're sticking me with the mics, they're doing everything, getting everything ready. And then I hear that they're about to go out and announce to the crowd that Christopher Reeves won't be here. I had assumed that they had done that earlier. I had assumed that they had prepared the people that Superman wouldn't be there, but Fat Man is coming. They literally went out, announced that Christopher Reeves was not well, he would not be there that day. And before I go out, hundreds of people start to stand up. They're walking out. I mean, they came to see Superman. So as I am walking on the stage, a couple hundred people are walking out. Now, there are 10, 12,000 people there, so I still got a great crowd. But there are two or 300 people said, whoops, I'm out of here. And so then I walk out, and I have the challenge of filling in for Superman. And the first thing I did, I looked at the audience and said, I don't blame you. I'd kind of like to walk off myself. And immediately they did what you did. They laughed, and they gave me a chance, and I filled in as best I could for Superman. Now, the reason I'm saying and giving you that story is because I hear speakers all the time, they'll talk about, well, that was a good crowd, or that was a tough crowd, or I always hear them talk about it was a good crowd, tough crowd. It's not about a good crowd, tough crowd, it's all about you as a communicator. In other words, in the law of anticipation, you want to set the table in such a way that your people anticipate what you're about to say to them. And this is absolutely huge. And so when I walked out with Christopher Reeves not being there, I let him know I was as disappointed as they were, and I kind of wanted to walk off the stage, and immediately they began to connect with me. And then I began to build anticipation, and I said, although I can't teach you how to fly, I will teach you how to soar to success. Come on, talk to me. And then we started soaring to success. But you see, I had to connect with them. I could have walked out there, act like nothing was happening, when everybody in the auditorium says a lot of stuff's happening. People are leaving. I watched communicators many times not watch the crowd, and therefore they miss their leadership speaking communications cues that would help them to be effective. So let's talk about, how do I as a leader create anticipation? What I do is I think of this as kind of like setting the table. And I'm getting ready to set the table, and we're about to have a great meal. And I kind of want to let you know what's happening. It's kind of like when you're in a restaurant and you say, what's special? I mean, I know you got stuff on the menu, and they'll say, well, there are 3 things here. And you really kind of tune in, because this is kind of what they're really doing today, and this is maybe something that you really wanted that wasn't on the menu. There's a way as a communicator to begin to help your audience lean forward and anticipate when you're getting ready to speak. And so I use phrases like this, and these are what I call anticipation phrases. Again, in my book on the laws of communication, I fill the book with these laws, with these practical ways that you can read the law and you can begin to say, oh, I know how to do that because I'm showing you a way. And so let me give you some of my anticipation phrases, okay? And I'll tell you what, you kind of judge them, okay? When I give this to you, if it was great, you raise your hand real high. If it was kind of okay, you raise your hand high. And if I didn't build any anticipation, just cross your arms, shake your head, and walk out. I've been walked out before. It's happened before. For example, I'll say something like this. I woke up early this morning, and I was so filled with anticipation of what I'm about to teach you. Now, what's that do for you? Come on, give me. All right, okay. All right, there are 2 right here that went halfway up. You get one more chance. If you don't lie and raise your hand high, we will be kicking you out of the audience. Just trust me, it's going to happen. Or something, I'll say, oh, watch this one. How's this for an anticipation phrase? Okay. I'm going to share something with you that I have never shared with anyone else before. That was good. And look, even the doubters got their hands up. Now, honestly, you could do better than that, because when it's really good, you can put both hands in the air. You understand? I mean, you get involved with me, okay? Hey, come on, help me out. Now the doubters are raising their arms before they ever hear. How about this? I have created this teaching, this lesson. I've created it just for you. How's that, huh? Is that good? Or how? Okay, well, you're doing so good. It took them a little while, but they're getting better. They're just getting better. Or this one, how about this? Look at the person that you're sitting beside right now and say to them, today you're going to learn something. Huh? Huh? Isn't that good? And guess what? Now you're even expressing what I'm wanting to express, and you're already making it contagious. Or I'll say something about this. I'm going to share something with you right now that has life-changing possibilities for you. Doesn't that just kind of fill you up with anticipation? Or how many of you are as excited as I am to get going? Are you ready to go, huh? Okay, here. Now, okay, I've just given you some, not all, of the anticipation phrases that I teach you in this incredible law. I've been setting the table throughout our time together today. I'm sure you've noticed, but if not, just watch this. So, hey, we're going to laugh together. We're going to learn a lot together. Trust me, it's going to be a wonderful hour that we spend just learning how to communicate. And now, before I'm done, and by the way, one of my laws is the law of anticipation. I'm building it right now. Before I'm done, I'm going to share with you 4 easy ways for you to learn how to be a better communicator. And the reason that we're talking about the law of connection is because, honestly, that's the key to the entire book. This is very interesting. I'm going to give you the key right now. It's so simple, you're going to get it immediately, but it's so hard. It may take you, like it did me, 8 years to practice it and get it good. If you get the book, you're going to learn a lot more about the law of connection because it is so essential for your success as a communicator. So I would encourage you to try adding a little visual expression to your next talk. And I'll bet you'll be amazed at how your audience responds. Show and tell is better than just tell. And I want to encourage you, if you'll get the 16 Laws of Communication book, you're just going to learn so much more about the law of visual expression. All I'm doing is giving you just a little tipping point of each one of these laws. Let me talk just a moment longer on anticipation, because there's a mindset of anticipation which basically says how we view things is how we do things. This is huge. So what I view is what I do. So that's the mindset, but the message mindset, as I'm getting ready to communicate, I just flip that. Because in the message mindset, I look and I say to them that how I do things is how I view things. And so many times in communication, the speaker talks about, as I referred a little bit earlier in the clips, about a good audience or a bad audience. It's really not about a good audience and a bad audience. It's not about them bringing the best out of me. It's about me bringing the best out of them. And so I don't rely on the audience to make my day. I rely on my communication to make their day. And there's a big difference between will they help me or will I be able to help them? And this began to really change my life as a communicator when I quit looking for good audiences. And I said, why don't you just be a good communicator? A good communicator will take a bad audience and turn them into a good audience. Does that make sense to you? That's just absolutely important. When I speak to an audience, I always believe the best in the people. Remember my father's advice, believe in people, value people, unconditionally love people. And so I believe in my audience and I believe in my message. And, they asked Frank Lloyd Wright one time, who was the great architect and builder of homes, they asked him what was his greatest masterpiece as far as what he had built, what he had as an architect formed. And his words were so good, he said, my masterpiece is always my next one. And that's how I feel about my talks. In fact, it kind of is a joke with people who know me well, because I get ready to speak and I'll say, this is the best teaching I've ever done. This is so good. And they'll kind of behind the scenes mock it, there comes the best teaching he's ever done, And let me tell you something. Somebody said, well, is that arrogant? I don't think it's arrogant, but I do think it's anticipating. And let me just say this. If you don't think the talk you're about to give is the best talk you've ever given, why don't you give the audience a break and not give them one? If I can't believe in the message I'm teaching and love the message I'm sharing, why would the people ever believe or love or connect with it? So let me just talk to you about your next masterpiece, your next talk that you're going to give. I want to share with you 4 easy ways to maximize the next time you get up and speak in front of an audience And these four things I'm going to share with you come out of another one of my laws in the 16 laws of communication. That is the law of content. The law of content just simply says that when you have something worth saying, people will start listening. Wow, that is so true. Now, when I wrote this law, I described speaking and preparing speeches and content like putting a puzzle together. And I talked about the fact that when you start with the puzzle, you put in the first piece, you don't know what, I mean, unless you look at the box top, it doesn't tell you anything. And you have to put several pieces together before it begins to make sense. I can still remember when I lived in San Diego, I would go to the San Diego Padres baseball games sometimes, and between one of the innings, on the big scoreboard back there, they would put one piece of a puzzle of a baseball player's face. And everybody knows that they're trying to guess who the player is, but nobody can guess with one piece or two pieces or three pieces. But everybody's watching this, and then about 4 or 5 pieces, all of a sudden, people start to put out names. Well, in speaking, it's the same way. There are what I call 9 pieces to the puzzle of your talk. Now, I don't have time to give you all 9, but I will give you 4 of them today. And by the way, why should I give you all 9? You won't buy the book if I give you all of them, huh? So I'm going to give you 4 of the 9, and the first one is for you to create a runway for your ideas. When I'm getting ready to express a thought or an idea, I want to give them a runway so that we can really take off, and we can connect. So it may be a current event, you know. For example, during COVID, every time I would address an audience, and I did most of this virtually, I would talk about the conditions and the circumstances, and immediately it would relate to where they were because it was a very uncomfortable time for people. So I'm taking a current event and I'm putting the talk in that current event, and everybody says, well, he's right with us. He understands what we're going through. He understands all the things that we are feeling in our own life. Sometimes I'll put out a question. I'll ask a question of the audience. Now, let me just say something about asking questions of the audience. As a speaker, never stand before your audience and ask them a question that they cannot answer. I watch speakers do this all the time. They'll get up and they'll say, okay, how many miles is the moon from the Earth? Well, are we astronauts? I mean, hello? And everybody, you know, we don't know how many miles. And then they'll say, well, and then they'll give us the mileage. Now, that's not good communication. That's showing off. What that is as a communicator, I'm saying, I know something you don't know. And what I'm doing, instead of having friends and bringing them together, I'm creating fans. I'm separating them. And now all of a sudden I'm setting myself apart. You never want to set yourself apart. So I never ask a question of the audience that they don't know the answer, because it's all about us. It's not about what I know and what you don't know. I saw this, I took a group to last year over to France, and we went to Normandy. And it was a very moving 3-day experience, and we had Doris Kearns Goodwin with us, who was a great leadership historian, and she is truly amazing. And so we were at a museum at Normandy, and we had a guide that spent an hour with us telling us about the advancement on the beaches, and just basically telling us the story. Here's what I want you to catch. Every 3 minutes, ask our group a question of which none of them could answer. How many soldiers charged up Omaha Beach? Well, I don't know how many soldiers charged up Omaha Beach. And then he would say, 7,322. And then he would ask another question. Every 3 minutes he'd ask a question, and every question he asked, the audience could not answer. Now, I stood back because I knew he was in trouble. Now, brilliant, guide, knew the numbers, really could have given us an enjoyable experience, but it's not enjoyable because every 3 minutes he's going to look at my group and he's going to ask them a question. And when he would ask the question, I stood back and I watched this. Don't miss this. He would ask a question they couldn't answer, and my group, as soon as he started to look at a certain section, they'd lower their heads. Of course they're lowering their heads. They'd want him to pick them out because they don't know the answer. It reminded me when I went to school. Remember? Come on. Remember when you're in school? Teacher asked you a question you didn't know? Yeah. Pass over me. You never want to do that. You want to keep your people together. That's what great communicators do. So I'll sometimes talk about a current event. I'll sometimes talk about maybe a question. Or I'll make a heart connection with them. And I'll say something maybe like this. I'll be talking to them and I'll say, sometimes I just get discouraged. And I want to kind of pull myself out of it. Have you ever had a time when you were discouraged? Well, everybody in the room says, yeah, I've had a time. I mean, the only person that doesn't say that is a person that's on drugs. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, we've all had those discouraging times. What am I doing? I'm talking about a problem I've had or a situation that's been difficult, and I always start with me. Remember this, in connecting with people, you start with you. And when I say I'm discouraged, guess what? I give you permission to say I've been discouraged too. But if I say, I've never been discouraged in my life. It's always been a 10 every day. How do you feel? Well, now you're all going to be liars. It's 10 too. But that is, you've got to connect with your people. And those are the 3 ways that I do it. Now, there are a lot of other ways to do this also. And let me just show you a few of them. I don't have time to talk about them, but you just watch the archives here in the footage, and you can see other ways that you can do this. How many of you like to play golf? How many golfers do I have here? Oh, you got a lot of golfers. How many of you would like to increase your influence with your boss? Could I see your hand? How many would like to increase your influence with your kids? How many of you would like to just have some influence with your kids? How many of you know people that talk but they don't connect? Huh? Come on, raise your hand. You got that, huh? Lao Tzu, who is the Chinese kind of philosopher, said, if we don't change the direction we are headed, we are likely to end up where we're going. So Martin Luther King is doing the great famous speech in the mall steps of course, the Lincoln Memorial. You see, the I have a dream part wasn't in his teaching at all. But he's looking at the mall and he's seeing the people. And Mahalia Jackson was right behind him. And there was kind of almost a quietness and awkwardness in the mall. And Mahalia Jackson says, tell him about your dream, Martin. Tell him about your dream. And that's when he went into, I have a dream. This lecture has potential to help you to become a better leader, to change your life. And what I'm going to share with you now is life-changing. And you just don't want to miss this, because I'm going to give you some stuff right now. This is pure gold, okay? This is so good, I hardly want to give it to you. So you better start with yourself. Because if you're leading others and have nothing to give them, then I can promise you, you'll never be what you want to be as a leader. After you create a runway, the second thing I want you to do is I want you to plan your transitions out. when I talked a moment ago about the tour guide, there's one cardinal rule for a tour guide. I mean, if you're, they have a way to identify themselves, and they've got a sign, follow me. And the one cardinal rule, if you're a tour guide, is don't lose your crowd. You know you're not you're not a good tour guide when you turn around and nobody's there, you know what I mean? And it's kind of like my favorite leadership expression, he that thinketh he leadeth and hath no one following him is only taking a walk. And that's the way it is with tour guides sometimes, and that's the way it is sometimes with communicators. So how do I keep them with me? Now, in the book, I talk about several ways to keep your audience with you. But I want to talk about one right now, and that's what I call the value of the pause. And if you've heard me communicate, you know many times when I talk, I have moments where I just stop. And sometimes for 3 or 4 seconds. And sometimes I'll pause and I'll walk away and go back to my chair. And why? There are reasons why I do that. Mark Twain said, no word was ever as effective as a rightly timed pause. Moments where I know that to be true. And so let me just, and sometimes for 3 or 4 seconds, but this is some of, let me tell you what I'll pause and I'll walk away and go back to my chair to emphasize what you're saying. There are reasons why I do that. Mark Twain said, sometimes when you're silent, no word was ever as effective. It just underlines as a rightly timed pause. Moments right, and I know that if we rush through so let me just, and sometimes for the miss the importance, and let me tell you what I'll pause and I'll walk away and go back to my chair, emphasize what it gives your audience a chance to catch up. Some speakers speak so fast that you want to say, excuse me, you can take a break now. Sit down for 2 minutes. We'd just like to try to assimilate all the things you said because you just said it. You said it so quickly. I remember years ago, Margaret and I were in Germany, and I went on the Autobahn, and it was so fun because you can go as fast as you want to, and I like to go fast, and I had a Mercedes, and it was in kilometers, not miles, and I knew Margaret could not transfer kilometers into miles. And so I just said, honey, when you see this, it's like 3 times faster than we're really going. And so we're going, yeah, man, I'm just on there going as fast as I can. I'm going 120. They're still passing me. We're having a blast. And finally, Margaret said, John, would you just slow down? She said, we're going through Austria now, and I'd like to see the country. I'd just like this. Sometimes I look at a speaker and I say, would you just slow down? Could you not pause? Could you not give people a break to just kind of think about what you've just said? Because communications, it's not a race. It's meant to be a very enjoyable journey. Another reason that I pause is that, would you just slow down? It brings the audience back to you. Could you not give people you could lose an audience, and when you lose the audience, the quickest way to bring them back to you because communication it's not a race. Remember when you went to school, a very enjoyable and the teacher would stop talking. Another reason that I pause is that move around. We'd all finally look at the teacher when we all look at the teacher. She'd begin again. That's so valuable. Lose the audience, and when you lose the audience, the quickest way to bring them back to because communication is not a race. Remember when you went to school and the teacher would stop talking. Another reason that I pause is that we move around. We all finally look at the teacher when we all look at the teacher. They begin again. And I wonder that's so valuable. And when you lose the audience, the quickest way to bring them back to because communication is not a race. Remember when you went to school and the teacher would stop talking. Another reason that I pause moving around, and I'll finally look at it takes all back to change and it just and I wonder that's what what that state's like worrying about is communication and raise a lot of the teacher realizes there's time and I'll finally look at it takes all back to change and it just and I wonder that's what there's worrying about is communication and raise a lot of the teacher realizes there's time
Thank you.
Not only listening to what they say, but watching. We not only that, the law of observation will begin to change. Trust me, not only that, the law of observation I begin to change. Trust me, not only that, the law of observation I begin to change. Trust me, not only that, the longer you believe it, observation I begin to change. Trust me, not only that, the law. This is a chapter and it teaches observation I begin to change. Trust something not only that, the law. This is a chapter and something very important about I begin to change. Trust something not only that, the law. This is a chapter and something very important about I begin to change. Trust something not only that, this is a chapter and something very important about I begin to change. Trust something not only that, this is a chapter and something very important about I begin to change. Trust something not only that, this is a chapter and something very important about I begin to change. Trust something not only that, this is a chapter and something very important about I begin to change. Trust something not only that, this is a chapter and something very important about I begin to change. Trust something not only that, this is a chapter and something very important about I begin to change. Trust something not only that, this is a chapter and something very important about I begin to change. Trust something not only that, this is a chapter and something very important about I begin to change. Trust something not only that, this is a chapter and something very important about I begin to change. Trust something not only that, this is a chapter and something very important about I begin to change. Trust something not only that, this is a chapter and something very important about I begin to change. Trust something not only that, this is a chapter and something very important about I begin to change. Trust something not only that, this is a chapter and something very important about I begin to change. Trust something not only that, this is a chapter and something very important about I begin to change. Trust something not only that, this is a chapter and something very important about I begin to change. Trust something not only that, this is a chapter and something very important about I begin to change. Trust something not only that, this is a chapter and something very important about I begin to change. Trust something not only that, this is a chapter and something very important about I begin to change. Trust something not only that, this is a chapter and something very important about I begin to change. Trust something not only that, this is a chapter and something very important about I begin to change.